Number one, apostles were made a spectacle to the world, angels, and men. Number two, state two things that the Lord will do when he comes. That's to bring to light the hidden things of darkness, reveal the counsels of the heart. Number three, the names of Paul and Apollos were used to illustrate the lesson that the Corinthians should not think too highly of men. Number four, Paul's fellow laborers will be regarded as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. And of course, number five, the chief requirement of a steward is to be found faithful. Number six, Paul wrote not to do what, but to do what to the brethren? Not to shame them, but to warn them. And having warnings are good things, are they not? Especially if we're going to be hurt without a warning. We should invite warnings. Number seven, as we studied verse number 15, what does Paul mean by ye have not many fathers? Of course, he was saying that he was the one that converted the vast majority of them. That ultimately is what he was talking about. For instance, on all of his missionary journeys, when he would go into a place, he would go into the synagogue first and teach and preach in the synagogue for a period of time. Then he would go to the Gentile population in that place and preach to the Gentiles. Onesimus and Philemon, he was their father in the Lord. And so you might have taught someone the gospel. Well, that makes you a parent in the Lord. When you teach someone the gospel and they are baptized as a result, then you kind of have that relationship. And that's what Paul's talking about there in verse number 15. All right. Number 8, how were the Corinthians begotten? How every person who is a Christian is begotten through the gospel. That's the only way you can be begotten and still be the Lord's. Now, you can be begotten in other ways, but that means that you would be in a family that's not the Lord's family. The only way to be added by the Lord to his family is by the gospel. What does that mean? What kind of implications does that have? What very serious implication does that have? The only way to be born into the family of God is through the pure gospel of Christ. What great implication does that have?
You have to know what the gospel says.
Okay, number one, you have to be able to understand the gospel. That is true in order to obey it, correct? So you have to be able to understand it in order to follow through with it. All right, what else?
You just need to say the sinner's prayer.
Well, okay, you're getting much closer to what I'm thinking about. You can't just say the sinner's prayer and be added to the Lord's body. Now that's really, now you're getting really close to the mark of what I'm thinking about.
About people following someone who's teaching. You don't know better, but you're following someone teaching false gospel.
Okay, you're getting even closer. Even closer. Really, you're saying it without saying it. And what Drew just said is, you can't follow someone who's teaching something that the New Testament doesn't teach. Much like the sinner's prayer. You can't follow someone who's teaching something that's not found in the New Testament. Most people do it ignorantly. They don't know any better. And really that makes the point even more. Because most people do not know what they are doing. All they're doing is following somebody that says, hey, this is what you do. But what they are doing is not according to the gospel. What's the great implication?
There is no other
Okay. You could go to Galatians chapter 1. If any man preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be what? Cursed. Okay, now I will just say it, because we're dancing all around it. But I do not want you to leave here without knowing this great fact. You cannot, are you listening to me? I want you to listen really closely. And if it offends someone, that's not my purpose. My purpose is to warn you, not to shame you, but to warn you. You cannot be a member of a denomination and go to heaven. You cannot do it. Why not? Because they do not teach the pure gospel of the New Testament church. They don't do it. Folks, there might be some denominations out there that might teach baptism for the remission of sins. It doesn't count. Why not? Because to what body are you going to be added? Are you going to be added to the church? No, because that's not their understanding. Their understanding is I'm going to be added to, join this body. Is there hyphenation in Christians? Can you be a Baptist Christian? Is there such thing as a Baptist Christian? The answer to this is no. There's no such thing as a Baptist Christian. Either you're a Baptist or you're a Christian. You can't be both.
I was asked one time what I was.
Right.
And I said I was a Christian.
I'm a Christian, yeah.
And they said, well, we're all Christian, but what are you? I said, I am a Christian. And he would know, like Baptist.
Uh-huh.
I said, we do not go by any other name.
We don't go by any other name. That's well said, Gloria. All we are Christians. That's all we are. Because when the New Testament is preached, understood, and obeyed, it only produces one thing. And what's that one thing? It only produces a Christian. It doesn't produce anything else. And it certainly doesn't produce any hyphenated situation. A good friend of mine, Terrence, his last name is Brownlow Dindy. He's a good friend of mine. His son's plays for South Carolina now, number 99. Very good. He's got hyphenated last name. No problem in the physical realm. Don't have a problem with that. But in the spiritual realm, that doesn't exist, you see. Yes, ma'am. Oh. Does anybody know how to cut off the pump besides me? Nope. Hang on to that thought.
Some of it should be with you.
That's the difficulty of being the chief bottle washer. You're the only one who washes bottles. All right, go ahead, Linda. I couldn't hear you. I was like, why can't I hear her?
I said I've heard of gospel preaching. Now I'm puzzled whether he's in Christ. Because he makes a statement and said that it's possible that you can obey the gospel in a Christian denomination. And I said it's impossible. I told him, I said there's no way. And 90% of the congregation said no.
Right.
He said, but you don't do the same. No, I don't. And I know the word of God, the obedience. And my Bible says when you obey the gospel, you are added to the body.
That's right. That's
How
right.
many bodies it is? Ephesians 4, verses 4 through 6. They only have but one body.
There's just one body. That's exactly right.
If you got a body over here and a body over there, there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's impossible because of the thinking of being saved. First of all, you're added to denomination, Baptist, Catholic. With that mindset, they baptize you, they tell you just accept Jesus in your heart.
Right.
That's one of the things they teach.
Absolutely.
They don't teach the whole counsel of God, and they sure enough don't teach what it takes to be a Christian.
Yeah.
Scripture.
That's right. They do not. On the off chance that they do, on the off chance that, let's say, I don't know if you know this or not, but in church history, the Christian church was with the Lord's church, okay? Way back when in the 1800s. Then a bunch of things happened and the Christian church split off and they went into the realm of denominationalism. Now, as far as I know, they still baptize for the remission of sins, as far as I know.
They do.
That's what I'm saying. As far as I know, they still do. However, when you're baptized in the Christian church, what do you become a member of? The Christian church, that denomination. You do not become a Christian because even beyond, baptizing for the remission of sins, what does that person believe? You see, that they are now a member of the Christian church. And that's a denomination. That's not the Lord's church. So you have to understand into what body you are going. Right? How can you spiritually arrive at a place if you don't know you're there? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Well, I do everybody.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Drew. You're smart, though. But you have to know where you are going in order to get there. You know, we get in our vehicles, and we should have an idea where we are going, and when we get there, we know we're there. Same way spiritually. We should know that the Lord's going to add me to His body, and I'm going to do everything according to His will. I only become a Christian, you see. So that's the implication of what we're talking about here, okay? That when you preach any other gospel and you obey a gospel that's not in the scriptures, then you do not become a Christian. You can only become a Christian when you obey from the heart the doctrine that is given in the New Testament. Can only be begotten through and by the gospel. And that's how the Corinthian brethren were begotten. Did Paul teach the pure gospel, or did Paul teach a perverted gospel? He taught the pure gospel. And so we can verify that. We know that beyond the shadow of a doubt. Okay? Number 9. Any other thoughts, by the way? Any other thoughts or questions about that? Thoughts or questions? Oh, sister.
How do you address somebody with that thought mechanism, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
He's supposed to be a whole gospel preacher. And you go to him and tell him that. Do you disfellowship from somebody like that? How do you show them scripture? And then they continue to believe that as being possible. And I keep saying it's not.
Right.
What kind of fellowship can I have with that person?
Well, you cannot have fellowship with that person. Because what ultimately that does is, if you believe, let's just take it to its ultimate end. If you believe that there are Christians in the denominational world, will you reach out to people who are in the denominational world for their soul salvation? If you believe that there are Christians in the denominations, why would you? You wouldn't need to. That's exactly right. The only soul then that you would even feel compelled to teach would be those who we might call unchurched, right? And those are the only people that we would think, oh, they need the Lord. But they're going to church at some, ex-denomination or whatever, oh, they don't need the Lord. Now, which is true? Those who are attending the denomination, do they still need the Lord? They still do, because see, they're being taught and believe a perverted gospel, not the one that's taught in the scriptures. Man has changed it to meet his needs, whatever those might be, for whatever purposes. And sometimes they might even be noble purposes, by the way. Sometimes they might be. But the fact of the matter is when you change the doctrine given by the Holy Spirit, does it produce what you want it to produce? It can't. It cannot do it. And that's the implication there, that all denominations, and by the way, Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 says, what about division? What is a denomination? It by its very definition, is a division. So automatically, you have already violated the scriptures, right? So, but there's no way to, Linda, the real reason why preachers especially will go that direction is that it's kind of the popular thing. And so it doesn't matter what scriptures you might even bring up that, teaches against that. They're not going to listen to that because they already have their mind made up, concerning those things, and have justified coming to, to those particular theological conclusions there. All right, number 9. What is the antecedent? I know we looked at this at verse 10, but we'll go ahead and review it anyway. What's the antecedent word referred to of we in verse 10, number 9? The apostles, that's exactly right. And then we talked about the bottom of the grill. I thought it was, whatever. The apostles were made as the blank of the blank and the blank of all things. Yeah, filth of the world, and the offscouring of all things. Yeah. Spent a little time at the grill on Monday, grilling some hamburgers and hot dogs and some sausages, Julius. Those were so good, by the way. So, not that I got one, but they look good. As I was grilling them, they look really fantastic. I wish I had an opportunity to grab one. Anyway, but, there was a little bit of cheese in that, by the way, and all of it started dripping down through the grill, and it was looking good. But after it all got cooked, would you want to lick the grill? Nobody says, hey, I want to lick the grill after grilling, right? Nobody says that. Now, do you want to lick the spoon after someone's gotten some ice cream? Yeah, you can lick the spoon after finishing up, dipping ice cream. But no, you're not going to lick the grill.
It's on whose spoon.
Well, I guess it does depend on whose spoon. It definitely does. But when you have been persecuted, sometimes you feel this way. When you are doing your best and someone comes along and through discouragement, through persecution, so many times it is just an offhanded comment. They're hurtful, aren't they? And especially those who should know better and should be encouraging you, but instead they've taken out their knives and are stabbing you in the back. That's how Paul sometimes felt, and the apostles felt in this, that they just are looked down upon by everyone. And sometimes we do feel that way. What did Paul hope to find out about the puffed up when he should pay Corinth a visit? The power, because when he came with what? He came with what? No, same word. Power. He came with power. Now, when did the power begin?
When he became a Christian.
No. You're not thinking long enough back. Stay ye here in Jerusalem until ye be endued with from on high. That's Acts chapter 2. That's exactly right. Now, when the apostles were all together with one accord, and they were in one room, there suddenly came upon them the sound as of a mighty rushing wind. What was that? That was the Holy Spirit baptizing them. And upon their heads a flame like as of fire. And they began to do what? Speak in tongues. They began to speak in tongues. That's the power that the Apostle Paul's talking about. And the apostles, Paul also, we'll get to that here in a few chapters, Paul was able, and the other apostles were able to do what with that power? Pass that on to somebody else. That's exactly right. How many? How many did the people who were the recipients, how many did they receive?
One.
They received one. The apostles had how many? 9. Okay? Again, we'll get that in a few chapters. But somebody comes in behind and says, oh, hey, don't pay attention to Paul. You pay attention to what I say. And Paul said, all right, show me the power. You want to believe them. Where are their miracles and where are your miracles? Because when Paul came, he came with miracles, and he also passed miracles on. Show me the power. Number 12. What choice did Paul give them regarding his coming? Come as one or two things. One or two ways.
A rod.
A rod or?
Or in love. And
Say again?
a-
Yeah.
In love.
In love. Okay. With a rod or in love with meekness of spirit. Or spirit of meekness, rather. There in verse 21. So, and he says it again in 2 Corinthians as well. For those of us who are parents, I guess all but a couple of us are. 3 of us. I forgot about him. For those of us who are parents, were there times when we had to say something to our children? Now, when I get back, if this room isn't cleaned up, I can come back and make you clean it up, or we'll go out and we'll do some celebrating, we'll have fun or whatever. Has that ever occurred? Well, if you're a parent, that has occurred. And you probably had to make them clean the room more often than you got to celebrate, right? That's essentially what the Apostle Paul is doing to the brethren here. Remember, he said, I'm trying to warn you, I'm not trying to shame you. But when I come back, I gave you the warning, now I'm having to discipline you. That's not how he wanted to return. But he would do that if they made him. So many times we think discipline is harsh for the one receiving it. When discipline is done correctly, who gets the short end of the stick? The discipliner. That's right. Not the one receiving the discipline. Now, I don't know if your parents said it to you, but my parents said this to me all the time. This is going to hurt me more than you. And I thought, well, you're not the one getting beat over here. But then as the parent, I understood what he meant and what she meant. Because the discipliner, when it's true discipline, that hurts them. Well, what do you think? How do you think God feels when he has to discipline us? Do you think he's jumping up for joy? He's having to discipline? his children? So many people look at God, when they do understand that there's discipline involved here. Oh, God's mean, God's unloving, God's uncaring. When obviously it's quite the opposite. How many chances did the children of Israel get? How many opportunities? And your answer is correct, Gloria. What did you say?
Too many.
Too many. That's exactly right. Because all of us know, because all of us are in this, we would have given about 3 chances and we're done. But God didn't stop there, did he? We do not often take into account God's feelings on a particular matter. Is that true or false? First of all, does God have feelings? If God has feelings, then how do you think he feels when we sin against him? Okay, it grieves him. Well, if it grieves him when we sin, what are his feelings about having to discipline us? Because if he disciplines us, whose fault is it? You see, we make him do that. Children make their parents discipline them. That's just all there is to it. And sometimes we force God to discipline us. And that's what Paul is telling the brethren at Corinth. You are going to force me to come with a rod. That's not what I want. Because really what I want is to come in meekness and in love. I want to come and embrace you and encourage you because of the things that you're going through. But you have to act right. You do. All right, number 13. What did the apostles do when they were defamed? They entreated. They went to God in prayer, verse 13. They begged those who were, they went to God in prayer. They went to the ones who were defaming them. They had to go, back to who they were talking to, like the Corinthian brethren or whoever it was, and defend themselves. That really is what 2 Corinthians is all about. It's all about the Apostle Paul defending himself. The Apostle Paul should not be defending himself. That should be unnecessary. Each of us should have a reputation to the degree that we ought not be defending ourselves. That should be unnecessary. But yet, that's what the apostles had to do. They had to go to God in prayer. They had to talk to others and continue to encourage them not to listen to those that would persecute them, that would ride their name down. And because when you follow the wrong group, follow the wrong crowd, where does that lead? It doesn't lead where you want it to, does it? It doesn't lead where you want it to. Number 14. Whom had Paul sent to Corinth, and why had he sent him? That's right. And so Timothy was sent to Corinth to remind them of Paul's teaching and person as Paul followed Christ. There in verse 17. What kind of relationship did Paul and Timothy enjoy? What kind of relationship? Right. So this was a parent and faithful child, adult child obviously, parent and faithful child relationship where Paul could tell his son in the faith, Timothy, this is what I want you to do. And Paul could go about his business and continue his work, knowing that Timothy's going to carry out exactly what his father in the faith, Paul, gave him charge to do. Same with Titus, right? Where was Titus sent? Not to Corinth, but to where? In Titus chapter 1, he sent him to where? The island of Crete. That's exactly right. So good job, everybody. Tyler was like, I had it right on the tip of my tongue. Sent him to the island of Crete to establish elderships in all the congregations. Because Titus was also a son in the faith to the Apostle Paul. Paul had many children in the faith, did he not? He did. And so, John in his letters, what did he call the Christians? Repeatedly, what did he call the Christians? My little what? My little children. You hear the parent-child relationship there? Because they did the work of the Lord. And because they did the work of the Lord, then they were parents spiritually to these children that they caused to obey the gospel. And these parents, namely John and Paul, that's who we're talking about right now. Obviously there are many. But these parents would send their children to do all kind of different things spiritually. And did they have to follow them up and see if they were doing okay and doing right? Did they have to follow up with them? Be over their shoulder? Now, did they receive a report when they got done? Yes, they did. But you know what? Paul didn't have to breathe down Timothy's neck to see he was doing right. Paul didn't have to lord over Titus and give him every single detail. Now, I want you to do this and this and this and this and this and do it this way and don't do it that way. You know how brother so-and-so is. Do you know how sister so-and-so is? You be careful. He didn't have to do that, did he? All he had to do was send them, and they would automatically then, because of the character that they had, the spiritual maturity that they possessed, they did the right thing. What a novel concept. Be a parent in the Lord, and your children are doing well. That's a dream, isn't it? Paul sent Timothy, his son in the faith, and Timothy did a wonderful job of defending his father in the faith, Paul. All right, anything further than that? Anything further than that? Thoughts, ideas? Okay, look at me. I'm not even in the right book. Isn't that something? It is what it is. What time is it? Oh yeah, we gotta go. We gotta go. Well, number 15. Let's do. We'll look. Just peruse number 15 real quick. You can write it down. We'll talk about it next week. How about that? Name some of the hardships suffered by the apostles and others. Again, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul's going to give a list of things that he personally, endured. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, he kind of gives an overview of all of the apostles, kind of what they dealt with. And the first is they were appointed to death. Several apostles had already died. James in Acts, just start at chapter 1. Maybe go through. I think it's Acts chapter 15, James was killed. I could be wrong. If I am, just look over me. But James was killed with a sword. Could be chapter 20. They were last as appointed to death. They were a spectacle. They were a shame to angels and men. That's verse 9. They were fools for Christ. They seemed foolish for the things that they did. Sometimes we look at Paul and like, Paul, you're a crazy man. Do you ever think about Paul being a crazy man sometimes? Everything that he endured? I do. I think he's crazy, kind of like my dad. He's crazy. Okay. But they were crazy for the Lord, and that's a good thing. Sometimes they were weak. They were despised, verse 10. They were often hungry. They did not have all of their physical needs met, yet they continued. They were thirsty, naked. And naked there doesn't mean 100% without clothes, by the way. It just means that they did not have the adequate clothing. Remember, Paul wrote to Timothy, and bring my coat when you come with you, because it's cold in this place. And so he had lent his coat out, and he needed Timothy to bring it back to him because it was about to get to be winter. So there were times when they did not have adequate clothing. That's what naked here means. Obviously, they were beaten, homeless. They didn't have anywhere. Who else was homeless, by the way? That's Christ. That's exactly right. Christ was homeless. They were reviled. They were persecuted. That's the underscoring there. They were defamed, made as filth. They were seen as just useless. Oh, these are stand-up individuals, aren't they? Would you like to be around individuals like this? That's some description, isn't it? That's some description. All right, we'll get into that more next week. Thank you for your wonderful comments and your kind attention this evening. We're going to take just a really, really brief, short break and continue with our devotional period tonight. Oh, who does not have a book and who needs a book?